Hey everybody, welcome back to the Your Home Podcast. We have an extra special episode for today. The boys are back in town. We've got your favorite co-host, Andrew D'Amato. Welcome back.
Hey.
Today we're going to be covering some really big stories that are impacting the real estate industry and talking about how this could also potentially impact you as a buyer or a seller. So let's get right into it. The first thing that we're looking at, just with all of these sort of news stories that we're going to cover today, it's all related to some of the challenges that we're seeing in the industry right now. The major one being affordability for buyers. And a large contributor to that, although a lot of people would think it's the high interest rates, a major contributing factor to the reason that prices have not started to settle down is the lack of inventory.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, right now, home affordability is a big issue for people, and it really is a two-sided issue, right? I mean, you have the interest rates being higher. That's obviously going to increase the cost of people's monthly payments on mortgages, but even more so than that, as far as what's going on with the the home prices, right? There's just a really high demand and there's not enough inventory, and that keeps home prices high. So, when you look at how to improve this problem, right? I mean, obviously interest rates coming down is one thing, but, that's where the interest rates are. That's not, directly related to supply.
Right. We see that all of the agencies that are backed by or directly in the federal government, so Veterans Administration Loan Program, Federal Housing Administration Program, and then you've got the other agencies, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. They're all coming out with these programs that you hear about constantly that are targeted at boosting up first-time home buyers, making things more affordable. Beyond that, every single state and local city has a down payment assistance or a grant program that's targeted to help boost up and make things more affordable for buyers. So there's a lot of effort being done on this one side, but there are simply not enough homes for buyers to go and take advantage of these amazing programs that have been created for them. So we have been looking at this as two guys who started this company really to help specifically first-time home buyers. We had some big ideas on, how we can make that first purchase for somebody just a more responsible decision and a more informed decision. That's a big part of why we do the content that we do. It's to educate people and really first-time home buyers. Lately, the first-time home buyer has been getting crushed, and this isn't something that has just been a result of the high interest rates. High interest rates have actually helped a lot of first-time home buyers in a way and at a certain period. There's a lot of people who are just priced out of the market right now. They simply cannot afford to buy a home, and that's terrible. But when we look back and everybody talks about those rates that we had at 3% and that being so great, first-time home buyers were getting absolutely demolished in those markets. If you came with an FHA loan trying to put 3.5% down, a lot of real estate agents and mortgage professionals would laugh you out the door. So, anyways, bringing it back around to the actual point here, that's what we have been experiencing, and as a part of our primary mission, in running this company, it is to help first-time home buyers. So we've gone beyond the scope of what a typical mortgage broker would do and just promoting these programs, and we've actually proposed some legislation. So we have created the Home Affordability and Veteran Support Act, the HAVES Act. And the basic premise of this is it is a capital gains tax exemption for any owner of a non-owner occupied. So anybody that owns an investment property, they own a property that they're not living in, they're a landlord of, they get a complete capital gains tax exemption if they sell that house to a qualified first-time home buyer or veteran.
Yeah.
So we look and we see, what is some of the data that we came up with, as far as what actual tangible impact this could have on the market?
Yeah, it's definitely, obviously I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, it is one of those things. There's really not much legislation out there right now that, or even just kind of regulatory action that actually, tries to target that problem of the supply,
Yeah.
And obviously we live in America. Everyone has a right to buy real estate, buy as much real estate as they want. And you definitely do see that for, investors. They buy lots of property and there's a lot of great tax incentives with it and they're great investments. So, those people who are big investors, they, in real estate, they don't, liquidate their assets all that frequently.
Right.
They'll utilize a 1031 exchange to roll those profits into another to, basically get out of paying capital gains taxes. So that's definitely the interesting thing about this act is, it's almost like pandemic relief. They had the business PPP loans to help small businesses get through, a tough time. Okay, well now we're having a housing affordability crisis. What's a way to get more properties back on the market? Let's incentivize some people to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way of putting it. I never even thought of it that way, relating it to the COVID relief. We don't want to make comparisons to one and the other, but we could. There are.
Well, you're talking about government intervention.
Yeah.
You're talking about government intervention to alleviate a very specific problem.
Yeah.
People are hurting out there right now as far as rising rents, rising home prices, and home purchases. Are a foundation. A pillar of American life, right?
Absolutely.
Generationally.
Yeah.
So people being able to buy homes, I mean, that's a really important thing for American society.
And what's nice about this is it doesn't really take a lot of government intervention. It is an incentive program. So these are the kind of programs that, for me personally, I like. Give people an incentive. Say, hey, if you do the right thing here, if you sell your home to a first-time home buyer, so that's one hand washing the other, or a veteran. Right. If you help out the people that we as a country are looking to prop up right now, as evidenced by all these programs that the federal government has created specifically for first-time home buyers and veterans. If you, as a citizen in the free market, participate in this, you're going to get a tax break. And so this is the kind of thing that I really, and both of us really feel like a lot of people could get behind, and bipartisan support, bring everybody together around this. There'd be few people that would say, even if you don't like landlords getting tax breaks, well, they're only getting it if they help out somebody and pull them up from where they're at in their current situation. So right. It's a win-win. A lot of people look at this and they go, well, if the guys are winning over here with these tax breaks, who's getting the short end of the stick? Who's losing? It doesn't have to be that way. There are win-win situations.
Well, the other thing too is all these, investors that have lots of properties, they're not just going to sell all their properties.
Correct.
However, might they take the opportunity to offload one or two of their portfolio,
right.
Put them on the market now, give it the opportunity to, someone who's going to live there and buy the house on their own, right? It's a way to incentivize more homes on the market immediately.
And we see, based on our estimates, about 25 million non-owner occupied residential units in the country. So if you get to 5% of that figure, you're putting 1.5 million homes on the market, and that is a huge help to the issue that we have. It's huge. So you're not talking about, this isn't something where every investor comes in and they sell their property, but it is something for some of those people who are kind of already on the fence and they're saying, should I do another 1031, roll this in, put it in the trust, never pay taxes on it, or should I sell, take advantage of this opportunity I have right now to be completely exempt of all the taxes. I've been rolling 1031 exchanges from this first property that I bought at $60,000. I've now rolled it up to $1 million portfolio. I've got an opportunity to put that out for sale and have no tax burden for it as long as you sell to first-time home buyer or veteran. There's going to be some of those people that are going to say, this is an opportunity for me. And I am very confident that we could get to helping the issue, putting some inventory back in that otherwise would not have been on the market.
Well, and the other thing to look at it too is, what's the downside? Like if you do a temporary suspension on capital gains to get some more properties on the market, and no investors take advantage of it and they don't add anything to the market, well, then there's no tax revenue lost, and we're exactly where we are today.
Right. And ultimately, if these are people who are going to sell their houses specifically because of this tax exemption, and they wouldn't sell without the tax exemption, then there is no loss of tax revenue. These people weren't going to sell these houses to begin with. They're only selling them because they get this exemption. So when you say what's the downside of it, crickets. Nobody can come up with one. So so that's a little bit of the background of the HAVES Act. This week was really exciting. We met with one of the top leaders of the Association of Independent Mortgage Experts, who actually had a meeting with the CEO of that group, and they were headed down to the Capitol. And so this is something that was being discussed in some of those meetings. And this is a new world for me. You've got a little bit of experience because you had interned on the Hill. So
minimal experience,
but you certainly, I was talking about doing research on some of the bills and, what's the fastest a bill has ever been passed, and saying, how quickly can we get this in? And, I think you, to look out for me as a friend, said, hey, let's make sure we got your expectations in line. And the gentleman that we met with earlier this week, similar, he said, hey, I don't know if you've ever been in these rooms with these Congress people. This is sort of how it works. I said, I've never been in any of those rooms, never thought I would be. But I was saying, let's get this in before Christmas. Let's have this ready. Yeah, let's have these properties on the market by the spring buying season. And he said, you should talk to this other guy. He's proposed some legislation. The guy's been running with this for 4 years. That's not we're not in that business. We're getting things done, and we're getting things done fast. So
we'll see.
Well,
we'll see what Congress says.
If you have questions about this, please reach out. If you feel like this is something, whether you're a home buyer and you would like to see more affordable properties on the market, if you're an investor and you'd say, hey, give me an opportunity to take my ball and go home and not pay any capital gains taxes, please visit havesact.org, HAVS act.org. Sign the petition, show your support. There's an opportunity there for you to leave some feedback. If you've got some ideas or some comments that you'd like to make or questions, leave it on there. But we appreciate it. Visit thehavesact.org, show your support. If you think it's a terrible idea, you can go down to the bottom and let us know that it's a terrible idea and why you think that. Because the idea here is, if we can get and show enough support for this, then we'll get the attention of the people who are in those positions to make these decisions. I believe that this is something, and we've talked about this, that could go straight to Joe Biden's desk, surpass all of and this is an executive order type of proposal. So that's what I'm looking at. I mean, I'm very passionate about this.
Yeah.
We're gonna move on from here. We're not gonna go down the rabbit hole of how affordable housing, the ripple effect of what that entails. So, anyways, appreciate it if you would visit havesact.org, sign the petition, show your support for this. This is something that we believe, with just 5% of investors were to release their properties and put them out into the market, would make a huge impact on affordability, for first-time homebuyers and veterans in this country. So havesact.org. Now, next, we've got some big headlines. We are talking about this lawsuit that a lot of people have been hearing about. NAR, National Association of Realtors, was involved in it. Can you give us, you've done a lot of studying on this. You've got some history that I think a lot of people aren't looking at. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm sure, most of you probably have heard a little bit about the NAR lawsuit. It's been pretty big news for the real estate industry, and it definitely has realtors a little bit concerned about the future right now. It also does kind of play a role into home affordability too, because you have, the big thing with it is, where are these commissions coming from, and are they exorbitant or not? And who's paying them? That's kind of the basis of the lawsuit, right? I mean, how it works today, listing agent lists a house, they have a preset commission rate with the seller. Half of that rate goes to the buyer's agent, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's definitely kind of interesting. My first question when I heard about it was, why exactly is NAR a party to this lawsuit? There were other parties to the lawsuit as well, like Keller Williams and a couple other
large brokerage
firms. A couple of them settled before the verdict even came out. But NAR, it's the National Association of Realtors, right? So they have played a very large role, over the last almost 100 years, as far as setting standards for real estate sales. MLSs, the multiple listing services, all the agents use. There's 1.36 million members in the National Association of Realtors, and about 6 million homes are sold a year, right? And that's kind of important to think about because, there's 1.3 million realtors and 6 million homes are getting sold a year.
Yeah.
Right. Now, like any other industry, real estate is definitely one of those things where there's some agents that do a ton of volume and a lot of business. And then there's a lot of, less successful agents doing much less volume.
There's a lot of part-time agents that just, might get
like
one or two deals a
80-20
year.
rule,
The 80-20 rule.
right?
Yep.
And that makes sense. And I'm sure it's like that in many industries, right? But, so really what's kind of come through with this verdict, though, is essentially that buyers may have to pay their agents' commissions directly, right? Or pretty much the case that I guess was made was that there was, it was anti-competitive, mm-hmm. right? Basically, yes, the real estate commissions can be negotiated, but they really aren't because of how the system works. Right. So, from your experience, it's pretty true, right? I mean, how frequently do we really see a total real estate commission less than 4.5%? It's usually between 4.5% and 6%, right?
They talk about, from what I've seen, what gets put in the articles and in the lawsuit is that 6% is the number. 6%'s gone by the wayside. You don't really see that anymore. A lot of it is 5. It's 2.5.
Right.
And there's a lot of factors contributing to that. Which is ironic that they talk about this as being anti-competitive, because you've seen some very large real estate brokerages that have come in with a discount model, and they're not charging the 5% commission. And so that has caused the rest of the market, that's just the way competition works, to sort of bring down, the overall commission rate.
Yeah. No, it's kind of interesting because I've read a fair amount of different articles, and there is actually some data out there that even though that is the case, it's few and far between that those models really are successful. They kind of get almost pushed around by MLS and what the standard expectation is. So with the MLS listings, right, this is kind of a really important part of it is, you have all these regional MLSs that is, essentially the database where, every home that's on the market listed by an agent goes on sale. Right. When they post those, that data is available to publicly, right? So, if you're working with an agent, they're going to send you listings from the MLS so that you can look through online as far as what what houses are out there. The thing that is not publicly available when they send that out to their buyers is the commission rate. I guess that's not on there from some article I read, but I've definitely seen MLS listings that do have it on there, so I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, so the amount that the seller is paying the listing agent, right, it gets, that gets put on there. So if the listing agent negotiates 5%, right, what that means is, that when the seller closes, out of the seller's net proceeds, 5% of that sales price is going to the listing agent, and then the listing agent is giving half of that to the buyer's agent. Right. So if it's at 5%, you're at 2.5. Now, the thing that they've found is that if you were to list a property and only put a 3% commission on there, meaning listing agent 1.5, buyer's agent 1.5, apparently buyers agents don't show those properties or don't kind of present those properties to their buyers as frequently. Now, I feel like that's kind of tough to prove. Granted, it does kind of make a little bit of sense.
It's also common sense.
Right, that could happen.
Yeah,
right?
That's the way the marketplace works. You have buyers who are represented by agents who are compensated through those commissions that you're listing. So just inherently, when you list a lower commission, you're going to have less motivation from that buyer agent to bring and market these properties, which is really what's happening. When somebody puts a listing up and they're getting this commission, the selling broker is getting this commission, that compensation is for them to go out and market these properties. And a big part of the marketability is networking with other buyers agents and attracting them to say, hey, bring your buyers, bring your buyers. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a little bit skewed right now because of companies like Zillow, where you can see all of the properties that are being posted online. So maybe there's some people, right. The buyer might see this property and the realtor may say, it smells bad or something, because they see what smells bad is that 1.5% commission.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure that that's something that's happened, but once again, it's kind of tough to say that that's definitely what all the buyers agents are doing. You don't really know that for sure, but but it does make sense, right? So that is kind of, I guess, a big part of this case is that, that unwritten practice or just how that functions makes it so the prices really aren't negotiable.
Right.
Which is kind of funky, in my opinion, to make that claim. But it is kind of one of those things that's interesting. I mean, obviously, both of us, we've been in real estate in mortgage, but we've been in the game with it for so long that, and it's been like this for so long that the idea, like the initial reaction is, yeah, this case is kind of stupid, right? I mean, yeah, I don't agree with it. The thing that's kind of interesting is when you do take a step back, if you're somebody who doesn't have our experience and hasn't been working in it in this way for so long, it is a little counterintuitive, right? It's like, well, if you're the seller, why am I paying for the buyer's agent? And what services are you getting from your agent as the seller, right? And then why am I paying for the buyer's agent? So I get the confusion there or what that means.
But technically, the agreement is the way I understand it, the seller signs up with an agent. They're agreeing to pay that agent's brokerage 5% commission. As a sub part of that agreement is a portion of this commission is going to go towards a buyer's agent. And ultimately, when I look at the merits of this, these disclosures these are contracts that are signed with these sellers, and they're agreeing to them. So I'm not surprised that a jury would vote would decide to say that in favor of, the plaintiff, in favor of, the people bringing this whole lawsuit. That doesn't surprise me at all. But because, people on the outside looking in may say, oh, realtors are overpaid. And it may just come down to that.
I think that's a big part of this entire case.
Huge part of it.
Yeah.
Every I'm in the grocery store and I say, something about a house, 4 people pounce on me and they're like, hey, I'm a realtor, and they're handing me business cards, and maybe a good amount of the population has a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth from what they've experienced with those 80% of real estate agents.
Right.
Not the 20%. So it doesn't surprise me that a jury would decide the way that they do, but it does surprise me that this would get to a point of a jury based on the fact that 2 parties came into an agreement. This was all disclosed. There really isn't any shady dealings going on. That's what does surprise me, is how this actually gets to a jury. Maybe the judge who's looking at it has the same opinion of those jury members. I had an experience where I went to a small claims court over, some little thing at the last mortgage company that we worked with, and we did win that case, but the judge in his decision had a lot of really odd personal opinions about the matter that he was saying. And I'm like, hey, look, the paperwork right here, we had this is what our pre-approval letter says. There's all these terms and conditions. It's laid out very clearly to this customer. They had an issue and, they lost a few bucks over it. And he wound up ruling in our favor only because the buyer didn't bring evidence that they had, paid for a $500 appraisal or so. But he really cracked down on us saying, you lenders, you can't be going out and giving pre-approval letters and then when somebody really isn't approved for their mortgage. I get that, but
obviously
the terms are, that's not the spirit behind it. This person, they went out and they did some things that did not, abide by the terms of this pre-approval.
Right.
This is subject to change and it's all disclosed. So anyways, that was sort of my experience, and what doesn't really surprise me about the jury, voting that way. But, how we get to that point of even sitting in front of a jury, it's a little suspicious to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I 100% agree with you. I think that I don't necessarily agree with the verdict here, and I don't really also, I don't necessarily have a problem with how the system works now. I'm fine with it, but I'm not really surprised to see that this is coming up because I feel like this has been coming for a long time, right? You have all these online companies, online brokerages coming out. And, if you go back to the origins of real estate, what was it like 40 years ago, right? If you were a realtor, you were the holder of the information. That was a huge part of your value, right? Oh, you want to know what houses are on the market? Well, we have access to the MLS. We make the little booklets, right? This is before the internet. Internet comes along. Now they're able to pull that data, and so you can go online and see all the houses that are on the market in your area, right? You as a consumer have the ability to do a lot more of your own homework that you weren't able to do before, right? So, now granted, that's definitely not nearly all the work that a realtor does for you is helping you find the house. They do so much more for you than that. But once again, I mean it more so that's why I can see this coming. Right? Why does it work? Why is it so difficult to access a house that's for sale? Like a licensed realtor has to open the door for you.
Correct.
Right? Why does, why is this? It's one of these things. It's been like this forever. And some people are, starting to ask, why is the system this way?
Technology advances at light speed, and we see how fast regulation works. It's the polar opposite.
Right.
So the reality is, hey, these are the laws. If you want to change a law, go ahead. But it doesn't seem to me that that's what's happening in this lawsuit. They're accusing people of foul play, of doing something, of breaking existing laws and acting in bad faith. And
True.
I don't believe that this should hold up when the way that I look at it from the surface.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on that. I think it's a really good way to put it. I also don't think that the fact that currently they're saying that the damages here are like $1.8 billion.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me, right? Like changing the way that it works is one thing, but going back and saying that all these transactions that the real estate agents or these different companies were acting in bad faith and thus owe people money, that doesn't make sense to me, right? Because I don't think any of those people were acting in bad faith. They were working under the guidelines of their industry.
It's the way everybody does it. It's the way it's always been done. If you don't like it, fine, but it's not against the rules. There's nothing wrong being done. If you want to change the rules, change the rules. Now, what's interesting is people look at this and a seller will often say, well, I've got to pay a 6% real estate commission. When you look at it, economists have looked at this and said, if you were to eliminate, this is a theory that really holds up. If you were to eliminate that 6% real estate commission, home prices would be reduced very, very close to that 6%.
Definitely.
That commission, definitely, yeah.
It's baked into the price.
It's baked into the price. So what I would tell you, if you're a seller and you're looking at this and you're saying, oh gosh, 6%, the seller isn't paying 6%. The buyer is paying that 6%. It is in the sale price of the home. So even though everybody always says, oh, the seller pays the commission and the buyer doesn't pay it, it's actually the opposite. If there wasn't any commission involved, the buyer would be getting that house for 6% less. So the buyer is the one paying and likely financing this commission over the life of their 30-year loan. It's not affecting seller's bottom line one bit.
Yeah. And it's funny that you bring that up, because that was actually something I had written here to kind of get to is, what are the alternatives moving forward? Like if this does stand, right, and buyers have to pay their own agents' commissions, right, then they would have to pay for it out of pocket in addition to their down payment and their closing costs and appraisal and inspection, right? Now you're adding this additional hurdle to home affordability that we were just talking about as a huge issue earlier, right? Now they
Absolutely.
now they have to
Terrible
pay.
for buyers.
And even if the commission's less, even if it's, instead of it being, maybe it is negotiated down, maybe now it's not 3%, maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 2%.
Yeah.
That's still a good chunk of money if you're buying a $500,000 house. You're talking another, if it's if we go from 3% to 2%, you as the buyer have to pay it. Well, yeah, you're right. You want to know what this does? Now you can't finance it.
Right.
Right. What you were just saying, currently now it is baked into your sales price. So you don't have to come out of that out of pocket. There's not going to be a way to put that in the loan. I saw some article, and the guy, I don't know who he was kind of an idiot, because that's what he was saying. He's like, well, what might end up happening is that buyers agent fees, they'll have to include those in the financing of the programs. And obviously us being mortgage guys, I'm looking at it like there's no way to finance cost. you can't just, there's loan to value restrictions. You can't just tack on another $10,000 to the loan and then because now, it's going to be underwater. But you're right. The way it works now, it already is baked in there.
So for the immediate, with some sellers and buyers that are reading these headlines, this reminds me a lot of when the Fed rate was at 0. And people would call up and, say, what's the rate? And you'd say 2.5%. And they go, 2.5%? The rates are 0. How much money are you guys making? And I don't at all ever mean to, look down or try to belittle a consumer for their lack of knowledge for something that we, study for and that we get licensed and bonded. So it's not that, but it's not expected for consumers to understand this stuff. So I don't ever want to make fun of somebody for not getting how it works. It's our responsibility to educate them. But we would frequently have people who would call in, they would see the Fed rate is at 0, and then they would see the interest rate, and they would have this misunderstanding. And people in the industry are aware of that. I think you're going to have, just in the near term, you're going to have sellers that are going to say, hey, I don't pay buyer agent commission. Because they read these headlines, they're going to say, I don't pay buyer agent commission. And it's going to be very similar. So if I'm an agent, as a listing agent, I'm not really worried about that too much in the near term. It's going to be a similar conversation to when we say, hey, the rates aren't at 0%. Yeah. These are the rates. Hey, you don't have to pay buyer agent commission, but if you want to sell your house, you're going to pay. This is the way that it works.
Right.
You certainly don't have to, but you're likely going to wind up paying it anyways. The price is going to drop on it. So I think that's going to be one of the challenges for agents, but that's an easy thing to overcome. Now, for the people who are involved in this lawsuit, I could understand we're talking about future technology and things coming in to make it so, buyers and sellers are able to transact without the same, involvement of a real estate agent. I can see that. That's fine. But all of these people involved in this lawsuit were not dealing with that type of technological environment. They were dealing with traditional real estate agent lists the house, buyer agent shows up and walks them through the door, and they made a fair agreement for it. So I really don't see how this stands up. And I hope that it gets thrown out at some point on appeal. It seems very absurd to me. And if it doesn't, I've got some ideas because I start to think this is a little fishy.
Yeah, I mean, it's
a little fishy on the merits of this. How does this get to the point of ruling in favor of the plaintiff when you look at the merits just on its surface, it's so black and white. Two people entered into a contract. The contract was honored. Point blank period. Throw it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger piece of it is really the antitrust piece is really more where they're making the legal case, right? I mean, they're saying that, the current structure amounts to a form of antitrust, reducing competition and pushing up commissions higher than services warranted.
Well,
so,
I know who. It takes one to know one, in my opinion. And so when you talk about antitrust, you look at some of these large technology companies who have been making that case and angling at this for quite some time, to where they first identified the MLS system as antitrust, anti-competitive, which I do agree with that. That data should be fully, available to everyone. And the fact that it's kept behind lock and key, with this MLS
and the agents have to pay fees to get access to it.
The agents have a gripe with that as well,
or the brokerages.
You have you're licensed by the state of Virginia to do real estate, yet there's 30 different MLSs that you would have to then become a member of and pay fees to in order to be able to get access to the properties and the lockbox codes. There's specific contracts for every little locality and everything, and those are all produced by the MLS. So I see that as sort of anti-competitive and just nonsensical that you would have it structured that way. But when I say what's really going on here, you've got some of these large property tech companies, I mean Zillow being one of them, and large direct lenders who are owning mortgage companies. When you look at Zillow's got Zillow Mortgage, and when you look at Redfin, they're actually a brokerage, but they've come out ahead of this and said everybody drop NAR. Then you've got some other large lenders who are, saying, hey, come to us and we'll do, the homes for you as well. So if you look at some companies that are large publicly traded companies that might have an incentive and some real reason. I mean, when you get to the top and you start talking about these big dogs, these large corporations, it's a dog fight. It's a bloodbath.
Sure.
Stab you in the back, stab you right in the chest, look you in the eye and stab you in the chest kind of fight out there. And I mean, one thing that's really interesting is I look at a company called Showing Time that I'm not sure if a lot of people have heard of, but it's owned by Zillow. And Zillow is the largest, number one lead aggregator for real estate agents. It's huge. They're the best in the business. They have a company that agents are currently using to find other real estate agents just to go and do that showing. So they've got a client. The client wants to see 5 houses.
Yeah, pay by service kind of thing.
They will get they'll get a real estate agent to go and just open the door. And that company is Showing Time. It's owned by Zillow.
Yeah.
So Zillow already has a database of real estate agents that are signed up and willing to go and do that one thing that seems to be the barrier. How are you going to get access to the house? How are you going to get the buyer through the door? They've already got a database of people, agents that are willing to go out and do that part of the job for $50.
Yeah.
So I just kind of look at the pieces of the puzzle, connect some dots, and maybe, stretch out there a little bit to say it's a little fishy to me how some lawsuit that just looks so bad on its merits could go through. Is there something else going on behind closed doors? NAR has a price tag on its head. right? How much could you acquire NAR for? This is an organization that you might think is just propped up by these fees, but they sell off companies and sell off services, and they could be for sale as well. If Zillow came in and said, hey, NAR, lay down on this lawsuit. This is, of course, a hypothetical. I'm not saying anything.
Right.
We don't want to get sued by any of these guys. But if somebody were to say, hey, we want to come in, take a fall here in the second NAR, lay down. Let's wipe this thing out, and because we are the companies that have that technology.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
we might be stretching a little bit there, but I mean, I'm sure. I mean, there's
You're
so
not
much.
wearing your tinfoil hat, so
yeah, I don't have it on right now, but I'm with you. I mean, obviously, yeah, there's real estate is a multi-trillion-dollar industry annually.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, there's a lot of companies and a lot of people that have a lot of interest and stake in how this plays out. And I mean, that's classic kind of, I mean, that's lobbying. I mean, that's a little bit how the country works, right? There's special interests, and usually the ones that have the most funding, and the best lobbyists, they usually are able to preserve aspects of their industry to the way that they think is the best way to do it. Right. And NAR is one that historically, I mean, there hasn't been a change to the commission structure on real estate in like over 100 years. So, the real estate lobby does pretty good on keeping things, where they are. Right. But granted, I mean, it's, the case itself, I guess I would find it more tolerable if there was some more clear ideas on what the future looks like. I think a big problem with like why, like I look at this and I'm like, this is kind of dumb, or a lot of people, especially in the industry, look at it and are like, this is stupid. Or this is a bad case. They need to appeal this and get rid of it. Right. If there was kind of some better ideas on what a solution is to the problem or what the future might look like, a shakeup, could be more tolerable. Right. But there's just so much uncertainty as far as what kind of impact this has, and there's not a lot of clear-cut answers to it that really make sense. To somebody who's an outsider, yeah, the buyer's agent should pay the buyer's commission. Okay. Well, but then once people who are working in it every day, the impact that has on the process, the ability to get approved, the money that you need, all those things, it's, it sounds like the worst idea ever.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm sure we'll see what happens on it. I mean, there's definitely going to be a lot more news about it coming out. There's going to be more court cases. I actually saw, I think there already is a couple more court cases. They're trying to do a class action for the entire country.
They're moving. I just saw Texas had one pop up last night.
So
yeah, it seems like a concerted effort, and I know everybody's pointing at NAR and the attorneys that are involved in this, but smells fishy to me. I can see some other parties behind the scenes pulling strings on this that have a lot to gain from the results of these suits. But anyways, we'll move on here. I
agree with you on that, though. I definitely agree with you on that.
So it's a little fishy. Follow the money kind of thing. Who has a lot to gain. So we just went over this lawsuit and sort of diving into like behind the scenes on real estate. I think a lot of people have the same questions or even more questions when it comes to mortgage and how mortgages actually work. How does this business actually work?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
That's also understandable. Again, it's never trying to put anybody down. There's a lot of people stick their nose up and say, oh, these people just don't know how it works. Again, it's our role and responsibility to educate people on, letting them understand the way that these systems operate. And I know I've had friends, and when I first got in the business, out of being a clothing salesperson for 5 years, they get into the mortgage business and they go, how does it really work? How do you really make money? Are you selling those mortgages? there's this, there's an obvious skepticism about it because it's mysterious and people don't really understand. So the way that I would look at the mortgage business, similar to any other type of product, a mortgage is a product. So if we were to use an analogy of like going to the grocery store. So you walk into the grocery store, you walk down the aisle and you see, a dozen different kinds of cereal. There's all sorts of different brands and they all have different prices. That grocery store is what most people that are going to go buy food are going to go to. They're not going to go buy their food at a farm. They're not going to go buy their food from, a large butcher, food manufacturer. They're going to the grocery store, and that's the way it works in the mortgage business.
Right.
So that's your experience when you go into getting a mortgage. You're going to work with someone that is a customer-facing loan officer. They're going to be in a bank. They're going to be working for a lender. They're going to be a mortgage broker. They are going to be the ones that you go shop for your mortgage with. Now, when you think about the grocery store, what's the chain? So how do the groceries get in the store? Well, they come from a wholesale distributor. Right? So you'd say a wholesale distributor is going to bring those products into the store. Where do those wholesale distributors get those products from? Well, a lot of them are coming like straight from the farm, or it's factory. A little bit, they're coming from the factory, the actual manufacturer.
Production plant.
The production plant, if it's beef, the cows might take a few more steps.
We might have to do another podcast on where does cereal come from, because I have no idea.
You got to check the ingredients, man. Watch out for folic acid or whatever it was on the last Rogan podcast I listened to. But let's stick with how mortgages work. So the groceries are coming from the wholesaler. The wholesaler in the mortgage world is what a lot of people will refer to as an investor. So there's these larger banks that are going to actually have these conventional mortgage at a 6% rate. So they've got that and they're selling it to the grocery store. So they sell the conventional mortgage to the store at a 6% rate. Now let's go back even further. Now we've got the manufacturer. When you look at the actual manufacturer of these mortgages, this is the mortgage-backed security. And that was created somewhat recently. And this is what really created a lot of the, frenzy in the housing market. If you look back, if you talk to a grandparent or something and you talk to them about their first mortgage they likely were putting at minimum 20% down and they were getting a 15-year mortgage. So I don't want to get off track here, but you've got...
I'm with you.
Okay.
It is a really interesting kind of system that it does work in the it's the whole secondary mortgage market, right? We can talk about the mortgage-backed securities. It did have a huge impact in the ability, accelerating lending, right? Because think about it this way. If you're a direct lender, right, and this person buys a $500,000 house, right, and their interest rate's 5%, right? Okay, so I'm a direct lender. Day of closing, I send $500,000 to this person. They can pay that back to me over 30 years. How much capital do you need if you're just going to keep these loans and collect these payments?
Right.
You would need so much otherwise, if you were a direct lender and you had $100 million, right, you're only going to do 200 mortgages. If you do 200, $500,000 mortgages before you're out of money.
Yeah.
And then, you're paying lots of, every customer is paying lots of interest back over time. Yes, that's true, but not enough to turn around and continue to lend. So it's it is because that's why loan sales happen. That's why your loans get sold to other places, because those lenders get reimbursed for the amount that they lended, and then that allows them to continue to lend.
Yeah. The nature of the mortgage product is obviously different than a box of cereal. So just think of it like, okay, a farmer has a cow. They sell the cow for whatever the price is to the wholesaler. That wholesaler buys the cow for $1 and they sell it to the grocery store for $2. Then you have the people coming in and buying that cow from the grocery store for $3. So it's a simple markup system So it's really shouldn't be that complicated. Any product that you look at out on the market goes through the same exact channel. So it's just when you understand just sort of how the business works, it sort of simplifies it for you. It's really not that complex. You're going to go to a mortgage originator to get your loan. And all they're doing is taking something that's come through the channels of these markets, putting a markup on it, and then providing it to you. It's not very difficult to find out if you're getting, just a totally jacked up, interest rate.
Right.
We right now, if you are shopping for a mortgage, we have developed a tool where as a buyer, you're able to, utilizing some of the unique technology that we have, upload your loan estimate, and we can instantly compare that with over 100 of these top wholesale lenders, that other link in the chain that we work with, to make sure that you're getting the best deal. So we'll leave a link on this video to. It's a free tool that you're able to use. We're gonna review your current offer and give you some real offers that you can actually lock in within an hour. And on average, customers who are going this way save up to $9,000 on their mortgage. So we'll put a link to that in there. It's www.mabel.loans/compare. So again, that's a free loan comparison tool that's available for anyone who is currently shopping for a mortgage. So do you have anything that you'd like to sign off with or add on that?
I think we covered a lot today.
Okay.
Covered a lot.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of interesting stuff kind of going on in the industry right now. We're going to see what happens.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for those real estate agents out there who are concerned about some of these changes, or loan officers that are concerned about some of these changes. I put a tweet out yesterday. You've got to, if you want to be in this industry for the long term, you've got to be somebody who is able to adapt and innovate yourself. I've talked to a lot of real estate agents about some of these changes, and they're not worried about it. These are all top real estate agents. These are all people in that top 20%. And they've seen changes before. They roll with the punches. They get excited about changes, and they look for opportunities. So whether you're on the mortgage side or the real estate side, if you're a buyer right now or a seller right now, look for opportunities as things are sort of getting shaken up. Right now is a great time when things are getting shaken up and everybody's afraid. Run into the fire. Go make it happen. Chaos is a ladder. Chaos is a ladder. Climb it. Get to the top.